Hey YouTubers, it's me, Mustin07, coming at you once again through the power of video camera. And in this video I'm going to be showing you guys how to replace the couplers on hoscale model trains. So here we have everything that we will need. We have our coupler set right here, KD type F couplers. They're pretty nice. We have an X-Acto knife, which is pretty important in some types of projects like these. And we have a set of screwdrivers, as well as some additional tools that will help us. And over here are my locomotives that we are going to be doing work on. The Burlington Northern GP9 and my CSX GP40-2. So let's get started. We will start with my BN GP9, which I sometimes call my BNSF GP9 because Burlington Northern merged with Santa Fe to create the BNSF railroad, and BNSF still has some old Burlington Northern and Santa Fe equipment from before the merger. So as you can see, it's a pretty nice engine, and we shall get started now. The first thing we must do is remove the screw on the plate so that we can remove the old coupler. And to do that, we will just take a regular Phillips head screwdriver and turn the screw counterclockwise, just like on any other piece with a screw. So we will just unscrew it, take out the box, and make sure you do not lose any of them, because those are very important to keep. Unless, of course, there's universal parts, which this does have, but you still want to keep all the old stuff just to be safe. And with the old coupler, we can just set that aside. And then once again, you're going to do the exact same thing to the other coupler on the other side. You know, just unscrew it counterclockwise, and then save all the parts and put the old coupler aside to make way for the new coupler. So to replace the coupler, you first need to get a new coupler out of the box and make sure, since it is KD, that it has a spring in it, because all KD couplers have a tiny copper spring in them that helps them work correctly, and without the copper spring they do not work right. So just make sure that has a spring. And much like where the old coupler was, you just want to put the new one in, basically doing the same process in reverse. So just take it and carefully slide it into place, then take the box plate and screw and put it back. This may take some time to do because it's a bunch of tiny parts you're working with, so you got to be very careful. But once you've gotten everything in place, you can screw it in clockwise, just like any other screw. And then once you have done that, make sure that it moves back and forth like this, which is how you know that the whiskers in it were put in correctly, so that way it will work properly. And now you do the same for the next. You know, you take the box plate and the coupler and you make sure everything's in place, all that stuff, just screw her in. And of course, it can be pretty tough once again, but just do it very, very carefully. And of course, make sure that it snaps back and springs like that. Now, we have gotten the couplers all installed. However, we are still not done, as we have to measure the height of the couplers to ensure that they are not too low or too high, because that can be a problem in model railroading. So to measure the height of the coupler, you will need a piece of track, and you will need a special little piece right here that measures coupler heights, because that little piece is how high couplers on hoscale model trains should be. Now, taking your locomotive, you're going to place it on the tracks, make sure all the wheels are on the rails, and then you're going to measure it like this. And as you can see, it's the perfect height. And then once again, we're going to do the same with the other side. Now, the things hanging down from the coupler are called dip pins, and if those things get caught on switches, that means that they're too low, and you should not have to remove the dip pins. And if you do, that means that they're too low. Now we're going to be replacing the couplers on my CSX GP40-2. It's a pretty nice engine. Once again, it's only DC, but I think that for something that's DC, it is very high quality, because usually the most high quality model trains are DCC, which makes sense because they're nicer. Now this one, the way we replace the couplers on it is a little bit different, because you lift off the top shell to expose the motor here. And as you can see, the screws are on backwards, and instead of facing downward like on most model trains, they are facing upward. Thankfully, it is the same universal parts as a lot of model engines have, with all the screws and the gearboxes with the couplers. So that is always good, because that means that it's very easily replaceable. We're going to be using the exact same Phillips head screwdriver as previously, which is sort of like the screwdriver that works on all universal HO scale screws. And, much like previous as well, we are going to start by unscrewing the screws counterclockwise. It's about the same as the other one, except of course it's backwards. This can be a little intriguing to some people because of the different setup, but I have found it personally to be slightly easier to work on models like this, because instead of having to work against gravity and everything, you can work more with it. Even I thought this model was a little bit hard to work with originally when I first got it back in 2013, but I soon learned that it wasn't that hard. Once again, we're going to be using KD type F couplers for the replacements, and want to make sure that there's a spring in it, which both of those have. And you want to use, because these couplers are slightly wider, you want to use slightly wider boxes. And when you put it in, you want to make sure that there's an audible click in the box. That's how you know that you successfully put it in the box. But you want to make sure it all goes well, and the boxes have to be slightly wider, once again, because these couplers are a little bit wider. So just put it in like so, and make sure that it bends around like that, springs back into position, so that way you know that the parts all are working properly. Now, an issue that this model has is that the boxes do not fit properly, so we are going to have to shave down the boxes to get them to fit. Now, when you do this, you want to be very, very careful, and you do not need to shave off a ton, and you want to shave it off slowly as well. So, to do that, you just take the X-Acto knife and shave off the back of the box to help it with the sizing issue. Doing this will allow it to go back further and allow the hole in the box to align with the screw hole on the frame of the model itself. So, you just want to carefully shave it off and chip it away, and just do the same for both, because both of the boxes have trouble fitting on this model. So, we're just going to slowly trim it off, and you want to make sure you do not break the box. So that's another reason to be very careful. Sometimes you might have to try again, but just try your best and do it slowly. Now that the boxes have been trimmed down to size, we can now put them on the frame of the locomotive, because their screw holes can now align better. So we're just going to place it on, as well as these washers, because the couplers before this were way too low, and so I needed to use the washers to help boost up the height, because obviously we do not want the dip pins to get caught on the switches, because that's not good. So once again, you just carefully screw it in, and then we are going to use the coupler measuring gauge and just put it together like this. And we're going to do the same with the other coupler as well. Take the washers, slip it on the screw with the coupler gearbox, and then doing that, we will then take the screwdriver and we can screw it into place. And of course, we also want to make sure that it works correctly as well and bounces back. And we're going to take the coupler measuring gauge to ensure that the coupler is the accurate height, which it appears to be. Now that we have finished that, we can take the shell of the locomotive and put it back on the frame. It might be a little hard because the boxes are a bit wide, so it might have trouble sliding in, but it will, don't worry. And it seems to be all good, so we can just take another look at it with its new Type F couplers, which looks a lot more realistic because a lot of locomotives have Type F couplers on them. However, that just about does it for this video, so hope this helped you guys out. As always, thanks for watching, stay tuned for more videos, and goodbye.